G'day everybody, Max right here and welcome to another great show. So this is the channel where we teach people how to first protect their wealth and then hopefully grow their wealth during this crisis. We've been talking about it for years, planning for it, setting up for it, and right now we are in a situation where you have very little time to protect yourself before the next wave of this hits. And this video is going to be all about 7 facts that will shake you to your core about the current economy. So let's start here. Before we even get into that, let's do me a favor actually. Let's go ahead, hit subscribe. If this sounds like a channel you want to be a part of, listen to, we have a great community here. Just check out the comments. It's always super positive, super uplifting, and a little bit of positivity in a world where we don't have a lot of reason to be super happy unless you are prepared for it. So go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of the community. Now, just to the side of me here, I have this graph. This is a graph of the 2008 crisis. So before we get into the 7 facts, let's just take a look at a little bit of history. Each one of those vertical gray lines in the chart is a year, okay, 1 year apart. So you can see this graph peaks and it's just before 2008 starts. So it's late 2007. Now this particular crash, the 2008 crash that happened, the global financial crisis as that later came to be known, you'll remember that in the first quarter of 2008, Ben Bernanke was on TV telling us that there is no problem in real estate, all the fundamentals are great, and everything is hunky-dory. Well, as you know, they collected data and they later released it quarters later, we know that at the time Bernanke made that statement, that we were already in crisis. The crash had already begun, just Ben Bernanke, head of the Fed, did not have a clue, or if he had a clue, was lying to us. Take your pick. So this crash started in late 2008. It was led by it was a mortgage crisis first and foremost. And what happened was the real estate market crashed. That's important to remember as we go on through these stats. You'll note that it started sort of late 2017, and the trough, it didn't bottom out until well over 18 months later. It was in the first half of 2009 that things started to turn around. So the crash was 18 months top to bottom. The next thing I would like to draw your attention to is you'll see halfway down through that crash, there's a pretty big leg up, what looked like a recovery, a V-shaped recovery, some might say, but it wasn't. Why wasn't it? What was this? This is very, very common. It almost always happens. And the reason for it is the reservoir of buyers that happen. So let me just pick an industry and we'll take it as an example. In the case of real estate, people may they've been looking for a house, they've got themselves pre-approved, their husband and wife have discussed it, and they're in the market for a crash. The crash happens, and all of a sudden, that now it's seen as a buying opportunity. So these people psychologically determined to go ahead and buy real estate beforehand. Now there's a crash, it's a buying opportunity, it seems. They feel safe enough. The ones who had previously decided to get in, they come in and they buy. Once that reservoir of buyers who had made their decision to buy before the crisis happened, once that's exhausted, now the realization that there's no new buyers coming in. So this is a little bit of a normalcy bias argument. If you previously made the decision to get involved in real estate or buy that house or do whatever, you stick with it and you take advantage of the buying opportunity. If you have not made that decision, you see things a little bit more clearly. You see that, are we at the end of this? Maybe we can just wait for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever. We'll just hold back on our purchase and see how things pan out. And there's no new buyers coming into the market. When the reservoir of old people, of buyers who had already determined to buy is exhausted, the next phase down starts. Happens in all different markets, happens in all different things. There's always this bounce back up, which we are in right now. You'll see in 2008 that happened took about 6 months to happen from the beginning. But remember, very few people knew that it was even happening until months after it always had started. So take a look at us. This crisis started in the last few weeks of March, and that's when kind of the lockdowns begun. There was some people were a little bit paying attention and preparing for this, but generally not. I certainly was, a lot of the people on this channel were, but generally the crisis was unknown until the government told us there was going to be a lockdown. That happened towards the end of March. We are now at the end of May. We are 2 months into this. The last one took 18 months from top to bottom. We're only 2 months into this. Right now, we are somewhere near the top of that bounce back, and we're waiting for the next few triggers to hit, and then we're going to continue on that leg next down. So I wanted you to have a little bit of that perspective as we go through these 7 facts that are going to shock you. Remember, this is what we do. We make these very complex economic systems very, very simple to understand so that you guys can protect your wealth and grow your wealth by positioning yourself in front of what's about to happen. So go ahead, like this video, go ahead and subscribe. Now, let's get into these 7 facts. The first one I want to start with here is 21% of Americans now rely on welfare. Now this is 1 in 5, it's a little bit of a magic number here. So you've got 1 in 5 directly relying on welfare. But how many people indirectly rely on it? How many people are saying, oh, we got pensions here. If my mum and dad lose their pension, they're going to want to move in with me. How many people are in that situation? How many people are in the situation of brothers, friends, siblings, if they lose their job, they're not going to be able to survive. We're going to move in with me. I'm going to have to help them. I'm going to have to be charitable with them. So while you've got 21% of Americans directly dependent on welfare, we are, I would say, we are past halfway, over 50% of people who indirectly rely on it, or their standard of living, their comforts is just going to be gone because they're going to have to share it with people in need. They're going to have to take in people in their house. Things are going to have to change radically for them. So we have reached, I would argue, a point of no return, meaning that the citizenry is going to vote for the people who are willing to take care of us. Just take care of us, government, print as much money as you need to, do whatever you need to, do not take the welfare away. Be it pensions, be it unemployment benefits, be it whatever else, it all has to come. In fact, as I say that, I don't even think pensions is included in the welfare statistic. I don't think it is, which means it's far greater than I even thought. So that's, the chances of us, the government, doing what is responsible and allowing some of these, allowing the market to correct is damn near 0 at this point, which means we are past the precipice. We are in this socialist utopia, which will have a very, very short shelf life and have very, very, very dramatic consequences. The Congressional Budget Office projects GDP dropping 38% in the second quarter. Okay, this collapse is so much bigger and so much stronger than 2008. I believe it's going to last longer because the government's doing more to help, and it's going to be more severe. Okay, so already in the first quarter, remember there's a bounce back in the second quarter. There'll be a bounce back even after that bounce back, because these budget officers and the governments, they're always being generous with these things, trying to paint the numbers as good as possible. Even despite all of that, even though we're in the middle of the bounce back, they're still saying it's going to go down by 38%. This is monstrously huge. Okay, we're going to give you 3 real estate facts here. And remember what I said at the beginning. The 2008 crisis was caused by a real estate crisis. Right now, real estate's looking good. It hasn't even hit there yet, so they say. There's still properties being bought and sold. There's a slight pullback, but nothing tragic yet. But look at these numbers. It's not even in the news, and it hasn't even affected the real estate industry to any great significance yet. Just think of what is happening as you digest these 3 figures I'm about to give you. 1/3 of American tenants have stopped paying rent. This is a gigantic leap up from 2008. In 2008, there was no concept. If you got kicked out of your rental apartment, your credit history was hurt, you were financially hurt, your chances of re-renting became very, very slim, and there was tremendous incentive on the part of tenants to do whatever they could do to keep paying rent, i.e. keep the economy going. Here, the government made the horrific and tragic mistake of saying, if you don't pay your rent, there will be no consequences. You can't be evicted. You can't get kicked out. You won't have, your credit rating won't suffer. And so we have now just a third of people, this is way more than in 2008, have just decided, I'm not going to pay rent. And there's movements online, hashtag rent strike, meaning what they're arguing is because landlords have been given forbearance, because landlords don't necessarily have to pay the mortgage, why would we give them rent? They're not paying the mortgage. If you own your house, you can have forbearance. You don't have to pay the mortgage. Why would the poorest of society, the tenants, the people paying rent, why would they still pay rent when the landowners don't? And it's a perfectly reasonable argument. So this is just a monster sleeping giant. And all three of these facts, they're all sleeping giants. I'll explain why after we go through all three of them. In May, right, 8.8% of mortgages are in forbearance. For those of you who don't know what forbearance is, it says that the banks have said that if you can just not pay your rent, I beg your pardon, not pay your mortgage, okay? You don't have to pay your mortgage and there will be no consequences. Now, it's not that you don't have to pay it forever, it's just you don't have to pay it this month and there will be no consequences. The government, in the way the law is written, that will last for 6 months. It started in March, I believe. 6 months from March, we're talking September, this forbearance period, so what happens is the government takes care of the banks, so the banks don't hurt. So the banks are like, we'll take care of the customers don't have to pay the mortgage. That's going to last for 6 months. At the end of that 6 months, then you have to pay the whole 6 months of mortgage payments back. All right, so you just got to not pay for a few months. Then it all comes due in 1 month. Now, there is no chance in the world that that will stay. The government will come up with some bailout package, maybe do a longer period of forbearance, maybe extend it for another 6 months, maybe do whatever. But already 8.8% of mortgages are in forbearance, and that means all these things are stacking up. Now, cast your mind back to 2008. For those of you who watched The Big Short, a fantastic movie, I believe still free on Netflix, highly recommend you watch it. The number they figure, that all the investors who were making money on the crash in the real estate market that was about to happen, they were all saying once defaults hit 4%, that's when the whole mortgage-backed security business collapses, and that is what caused the 2008 financial crisis. When 4% fail. Here we have nearly 9%. They haven't failed because they're not in foreclosure, they're in forbearance. The banks just said you don't have to pay. We're at 9%. What do you think more than half of these companies and mortgage repayments that are in forbearance are going to be able to pay? No chance. No chance whatsoever. Next stat. 4.7 million Americans cannot pay their mortgages right now. So this is basically the same stat, but the difference is it's in, I'll just give you the actual number because that's 1.5 million more than in the global financial crisis of 2009. Remember, 2008, we're humming along. There's a problem with the mortgage security. They gave out too many loans to people who couldn't pay it back. All right. Once it hit a critical threshold, in that case, it was about 4% of people who could not pay their mortgages back. Then we had a cascading effect that lasted 18 months, triggered by the mortgage-backed security crisis, triggered by people not being able to pay their mortgages, caused the worst financial crisis in history since the Great Depression. We already have more than 1.5 million more people in the US who can't pay their mortgages than happened in 2008 crisis. How can this possibly end well? Right? And I got to stress this again. I said it before, but these last three stats, this is what's happening in the real estate market. No one's talking about the real estate market. The real estate market looks relatively fine compared to stocks, compared to employment, compared to everything else. It hasn't even hit the real estate market yet in earnest. There are problems in other sectors of the economy that are even bigger than the crisis in real estate. But the crisis in real estate is bigger than the crisis that in 2008, which caused the greatest recession since the Great Depression. What do you think's going to happen? Almost 40 million Americans have lost their jobs since the coronavirus pandemic struck in March, more than the population of Canada. Guys, I just touched the microphone, sorry. We're talking absolute apocalypse in the economy. There is no comeback from here. 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. If there was any slither of a delusion that there could be a comeback from this stat destroys it. And let me tell you why. What it's telling you is another fancy way of saying there's no savings. People don't have savings. If they had savings for a rainy day, it rained in 2008, they spent it. There is no savings. For years, the only way the economists have been saying that we have a chance to get out of this, the chance to get out of the massive debt that's built up. Remember, just the national debt, forgetting about personal debt, forgetting about other debt, just the government's debt is at about $24 trillion at the moment, right? That is definitely more now than GDP. So it's over 100% of GDP. What does that mean? Right, this is a critical number. This means that you add up what everybody produces in the entire economy, a year's worth of labor for everybody. What's the value of their product? It's not equal to the amount of debt that we owe. And just the government debt. There's still personal debt on top of that. I think it's between 8 and 13 trillion personal debt. And there's two other different categories of debt we talk about that each of us as citizens are on the hook for. So the only way to get out of this and pay off that debt is if we have savings. Why is savings critical? Savings is the requirement for growth. Why is that? To understand why savings is the requirement for growth, you have to cast your mind back, all the way back, just picture like caveman scenario, right? You're a caveman. You spend every hour of every second hunting, gathering, trying to get enough food to eat. If you finally have enough food where you can actually don't consume everything that you kill and gather, and you have a little bit of savings in food, now you can use your time to invest in doing not hunting and gathering. You can invest your time to produce a tool, to produce a widget, to produce something, maybe a better spear, a better boomerang, the Australian kicks in, some better hunting tool, which now your productivity goes up. And now, the next week, you can hunt and gather a little more efficiently because of the tool you built, and now you have a little bit more food savings. Now you don't have to spend every second of every day hunting and gathering. You have a little bit more time to go ahead and invest in creating a new tool, in creating a new strategy, in creating a more efficient way to hunt and gather. And now all of a sudden the next week, you have a little bit more savings. Savings, see, when we are improving our productivity, when we're creating a tool, during those times, we aren't creating new product, we are just creating new tools to create new product. In order to do that, you have to live off savings during that time. Savings is the most important thing and the precursor to productivity growth. Only when the savings is there can we have productivity growth. When we have productivity growth, then things accelerate in future years. Without that, productivity, flatlines actually. There's no need to retard our technological development because we don't have savings. So I hope that really presses the point about why there is no magic growth coming at the end of this. And it's 1,000 times more true because the government won't let the economy heal. The crash and the bankrupting of a whole bunch of inefficient industries is the healing. It's what happens is when the previous video I did was all about bailouts, why bailouts do the opposite of what we need to do. When you let something go bankrupt, you liquidate the assets, you just sell them for whatever you can to whoever can use them and whoever can get some value out of them. Then you now have efficient economies not loaded down with debt, and now we can rebuild. Because the government is bailing everybody out, we simply cannot rebuild. The inefficient industries are still there. The efficient part of the economy is dragging this anchor, this boulder behind of it, and it grows and grows with inefficient businesses, and it just dies. It cannot sustain. So this concept that 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck is why we can't possibly grow ourselves out of this problem. The other important fact that I want you to get from this is just how scared people are. How scared would you be? You're in the moment of a pandemic. Could it come back? Might it not come back? Will I got my job back? I live paycheck to paycheck. I am completely dependent on welfare, on my savings are gone. How scared am I? Do you think a person in that mindset who gets a check from the government, let's say they get $2,000 a month check, let's say they do that, a UBI or something like that. Do you think they're going out and buying, upgrading their car like they were before? They're buying the new TV set, they're extending the house, they're hiring the tradesman and laborer to redo the kitchen, redo the bathroom. Are any of those things happening? Hell no. You're scared. You're saving money. Who knows what I'm going to need? And there's no chance the economy's coming back, guys. That's the point I'm trying to get across. So check out this channel. This channel teaches you how to first understand what's going on, understand what's about to happen. We make it super simple so that you can understand it. And then we teach you how to protect your assets and position yourself to make a hell of a lot of profit while all this thing takes place. We still have, as a bare minimum, the last one was 18 months. We're 2 months into this one. We have at least 16 months to go. I would argue this one is going to be longer because the government is helping more. We've got about 2 years of this to happen. And if you want to learn how to protect yourself and make money during this crisis, this is the channel to subscribe to. We're going to teach it all here right now. I used to have a product called the Success Council. I no longer offer it. And what I was thinking of doing, if you guys want me to do it, I was thinking about taking some of the video tutorials out of that and putting it on YouTube available for you guys for free. Okay, so in order to do that, I want you guys to share this video, send it around, let people see it. If we make this one of the most successful videos I've ever done, I'll know that you guys want that, and I might pull a little bit more content out of the members area to give you guys the tools of to give you guys the tools to profit from what's about to happen. So go ahead, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this far and wide, and I'll see you guys in the next video.